Welcome back to the Go Have Good Sex podcast, the show where faith and pleasure finally stop fighting. I'm Angela, the Christian sexpert, sex coach, truth teller, and your new favorite bedtime devotional. If you're ready to go deeper, check out my resources for couples and individuals. From my free 15-minute coaching consults to spicy but faith-friendly resources like the Marriage Playdate, to my Patreon, where I teach you all the things your church aunties never told you about. And yeah, you know I've got it covered with merch, journals, bookmarks, and everything in between at thechristiansexpert.com. So whether you're here to learn, to heal, or to spice things up with scripture and sass, I'm your girl, and I'm so glad you're here. Let's get into today's episode, and remember, go have good sex. Welcome back to Go Have Good Sex. I'm Angela, the Christian sexpert, and today we're talking about a heavy but essential topic, human trafficking. When most people hear that phrase, they imagine dramatic movie scenes, kidnapping, strangers, overseas rings, but trafficking in America often looks far closer to home. It hides in relationships, families, and communities, and it impacts marriages, intimacy, and faith in very deep and lasting ways. My guest today is Bryan. She's the founder and CEO of the Genesis Project, a Christ-centered nonprofit equipping communities to respond to human trafficking with compassion, advocacy, and survivor-centered care. She is a survivor of child sex trafficking herself, and for more than a decade, she has trained thousands across the U.S. and internationally, advised policymakers, and helped shape legislation that protects the vulnerable. Her story of resilience, faith, and leadership has inspired audiences worldwide. Married for 40 years, she treasures her family, including 3 children, their spouses, and 14 grandchildren. Kathy brings both professional expertise and lived experience, and today she's here to help us understand how trafficking can show up in intimate relationships, the red flags we miss, and what real hope and healing can look like. On a personal note, I became connected to Kathy because I am good friends with one of her daughters, and Kathy was instrumental in helping me speak at Women Evolve last year. She is an amazing soul, and I cannot wait for you all to hear from her. Let's get into it. Kathy, thank you so much for being here today.
Absolutely. I'm excited. I'm excited to do it.
So am I. I knew from the very beginning when I started the podcast that I was eventually going to need to have you on as a guest. So I'm super excited. All right. So
Aw.
we were just talking off camera about how there's some questions that we both get asked over and over and over again, with the knowledge that not everybody has been exposed to the same information that we have. But you and I know that when people think about human trafficking, they think generally this very dramatic, girls are getting kidnapped from the mall sort of situation and sent to foreign countries and, sold into slavery. And that's just not the reality of what the majority of trafficking is in America. So can you very quickly help clear up some of the biggest myths and tell us like how it happens in families or intimate relationships?
Well, that's only a really small question, so I'll just take a second.
Yeah.
Um, so yes, so the common myths, which I think I even have posted about those on my socials. So if somebody doesn't catch all of it, they can look there. The white van, somebody's following me and cart me off and sell me and all of the things. The truth is, in the United States, less than 5%, it's actually lower, but we always quote 5, less than 5% of human trafficking is actually kidnapping based. It just doesn't happen that way. And there's a lot of reasons for that. But it just literally doesn't happen that way. If somebody is following you around in Walmart or, sitting in a white van outside of your house, creeping on you, is that still danger? Like, absolutely. But is it trafficking? Probably not. Trafficking is incredibly, incredibly lucrative and it's very low risk. So it's like a high reward, low risk crime to the trafficker. So if you knew how much money they could make even just by trafficking two girls for a year, you would understand why they don't want to run into Walmart and make a big hullabaloo and cart you off because they're exposing themselves when there's so many other ways that they can acquire a victim and do. So that's one. And what was the other part of the question?
How does it happen with like families or intimate relationships?
So the rest of trafficking. So first of all, I'd like to say that about 83%, that's not exact, of course, but right around 85% of the victims in the United States are actually United States citizens. I'm going to pause so they can let that sink in. Are people brought here from other countries? Absolutely. Is the border an issue? A tiny one. In comparison, okay, I'm not saying,
Mhm.
oh my gosh, just lay it wide open. But if we don't look at truth, then we miss so many victims. And our citizens, our children, our adults, young and older adults, are being trafficked in our country and they're US citizens 83% of the time. So there's that. Now, of that trafficking in the United States, I'm sorry, ahead of time, please take a deep breath. 40% of trafficking in the United States is familial, which means a person in that person's family is the trafficker, the pimp, the controller, whatever label you want to use. It is somebody that they are related to, whether that's their mom, their dad, their grandpa, their grandma, their uncle, their cousin. I have served clients from all of those people who were trafficked by one of those people that I just mentioned. Familial trafficking, when we talk about that, most people immediately think, oh, single mom trying to get by, maybe has a drug problem, sells her kid for drugs or food. Yes, that happens. But it's not just that. And the reason it's important to keep our lens wide and understand all the myriad ways. There's not just one way or just three ways. Even within familial trafficking, it happens in every socioeconomic division. I have had clients whose parents were pillars of their community, very wealthy, and it was a generational thing for them to traffic within the family. So it doesn't just look one way. So in addition to familial, there's several different types of trafficking. One of the most prevalent ways of entering into a situation, it's usually a fraudulent relationship. A lot of people call those traffickers Romeo pimps or lover boy. It's some form of relationship where the person who is being victimized actually believes this person loves them. They are in love with them. They groom them long enough to where they fall in love with them and usually sell them a dream and or buy into that person's dream. And it's us against the world. And then that is like this foundation of trust. And it can go usually for a decent amount of time, but it depends on the person. It depends on the person being victimized. And sometimes, like for me, my grooming took upwards of 6 months. Some people, especially if they have huge amounts of vulnerability before this, it usually tends to be easy to win their trust and pull them in because their vulnerabilities are higher. So their needs are higher and traffickers exploit needs. But those relationships, they create this bond that is a deep rooted need in that victim's life. And then the trafficker flips it and starts selling them. And it's almost like a domestic violence relationship of epic proportions with a lot of other traumas and things mixed into it. So I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, 100%. I think trafficking gets sensationalized in media, and not just like Hollywood, like Law and Order SVU or whatever, but like the news stations pick up the more sensationalized trafficking stories, like you said, like the single mom with the drug problem, right? And so I think that people don't even really I have seen often where people don't even have a real understanding of what trafficking, not just how it happens, but like an actual definition. Because like there could be somebody in your kid's high school who is being trafficked currently, and they're still living at home with their parents. They are still on the cheerleading squad or whatever. But they are still being victimized because it's not just, kids getting kidnapped and locked into a room and victimized that way. And so I think, can you just kind of briefly, when we say trafficking, can you break that down practically a little bit, if that makes sense?
Sure. So there is a very long federal definition, which is like over 100 words, and it's all one long sentence. So I'm not going to point you there, but there is one.
That's so
It's
aggressive.
easier.
No, thank you.
How many words?
Right.
Um,
One of the things that I say that I like to do as the Christian sexpert is I like to bridge the gap between professionals and lay people. So one of my favorite people is, she's now Dr. Ashley Hudson, and she just completed her dissertation. She's going to be on the podcast next month. But she will sometimes text me and she'll be like, here's this clinical phrase that I used in my dissertation. Help me figure out how to use social media speak to say this. And because I think people who work in certain industries get used to the language of that industry that is not the same language that the everyday podcast listener hears. And so, yes, please don't give us the 100-word long federal definition.
I mean, I have
Please,
it. I'm just kidding.
yeah, I'm sure that you do, but please break it down for the people who say that's too much.
Yeah, that's fine. I'll give an example. I think one of the things to remember is it needs three components. If it's an adult, it needs three components: an action, a means, and a purpose. So let's suppose for, giggles, that I recruited Angela. That's the action, recruitment, for
Mhm,
the purpose of a sex slavery through force, fraud, and coercion. I used all three. Those are the
mhm,
means. So I actually did that backwards, but the means is usually in the middle. But anyway, so, or conversely, if I go to a soccer game at school and I see it and I'm a guy, let's assume I'm a middle-aged trafficker. I'm at a soccer game scouting out and I see this 12-year-old and I'm like, yes, that's the one. And so I befriend her and just start talking to her like a friendly older person who's also interested in soccer and probably has a kid on her team or at her school or whatever. You're just making friends with her. That is called grooming. And he's using the action of friendship, recruitment. Um, we're supposed to have a means, right? Force, fraud, or coercion, but we don't if it's a minor. You don't have to prove force, fraud, or coercion. So just the simple fact of him grooming her and that leading to commercial sex, sexual slavery, labor, trafficking, any of those things, as a case of trafficking. So when I say commercial sex, that is when anything of value is exchanged for any type of sex act. So that means not just the pretty woman version, like we've all been taught that prostitution is a choice. That's a whole other podcast. But
yes.
90% of people in the United States who are caught in prostitution and that we have been taught to call prostitutes, over 90% of them do not want to be there. They're actually being trafficked. So that's one example of commercial sex, stripping, online webcamming, OnlyFans. Probably most of your listeners have heard of OnlyFans. People are bought and sold online in homes and bars and brothels all over the country. I've even had people sold at duck camp. If you're from the South, you know what duck camp is. So yeah, it's a it is a form of modern day slavery. You don't have any choices while you are being trafficked.
I make people really mad when I talk about pornography and because people try and tell me, well, I use ethical pornography, and I'm like, that's cute. But you can't, there's no, when money enters the equation, consent leaves the room. And people get really mad and they're like, well, I go to work and get paid for my job. No, it's not the same thing. It's not the same thing.
Not, it's not the same thing. And even if somebody thinks that for themselves, like usually when people think that, they're applying it to themselves and to their intentions and to their motives and to their desires. Would I just need you to trust the survivors who are saying this, because I don't want you to experience it to figure it out. But once that money exchanges hands, you have zero control over what that buyer does. If you went and bought a car today, and then later on tonight, I'm like, I'm gonna hit your car with a, baseball bat, you're gonna be like, that's mine. You can't do that because you bought it, or if you throw paint on your brand new car and somebody's like, why are you doing that? It's mine. I paid for it. That is our consciousness in this country. If you've paid for something, then you expect control over it. And that is exactly how buyers treat women and boys and girls that they buy, and men.
Oh
Whatever
yeah,
I
I
want, will do.
yeah,
And at that point, it's not work, because you
yeah,
said there's no consent.
yeah. Um, I just want to throw out there that it isn't just girls and women who are trafficked. This is another controversial one. But on social media, Andrew Crawley, I'm going to link his Instagram in the show notes. But he talks about how had thought that he was consenting to create porn, but wound up being kidnapped and raped before he was able to escape. And I say that this is, and his story of escaping pornography and trafficking is incredibly powerful. I just, if this is important to you, he does identify as a gay Christian. So, for those who are intrigued by his story, I have given you full information before you seek out his story. But he has done some great work with Fight the New Drug on talking about the dangers of pornography and how, if you think that you're consenting, it's really not, and you will wind up being trafficked. And his story is a great example of how it's not just girls and women. So, we said that we were going to start with the list and then we would go other places. And oh, look, as always, we went to other places. So, all right,
Leave something.
tell us about you started the Genesis Project. Tell us about the Genesis Project and how does your advocacy model walk alongside trafficking survivors long term?
So I started Genesis in May of 2022, it's actually almost a year after I had resigned from Rebecca Bender Initiative, which worked with I had worked with that organization since it started. And when I left, I was director. Loved it, had a ton of, I don't want to say fun, but it was so rewarding. And in that capacity, mentored a lot of adult survivors. Resigned thinking I was going to do consulting and training. And then in February of the following year of 22, the Lord woke me up, and as he tends to do, I don't know why, around 3:13 almost every time. It's kind of whack, but
Yes.
3:15,
There's
3:13, he
something
went,
about the 3 o'clock hour in the middle of the night.
yes. And so I keep a notebook by my bed, and he woke me up, and that was where Genesis got started. He even gave the name. I did not name it the Genesis Project. He did. So, yeah, we launched in May, and it has been a wonderful roller coaster of a ride. In the last 3 years, we have served 243, I believe is the number, victims between adults and minors in the last 3 years, just here in Central Arkansas. A handful of those are national survivors because I've been doing the work for over 15 years, and so I do get referrals from out of state, and we do everything we can to serve those individuals that are referred. As far as our advocacy services, the journey out of trafficking sometimes is very short. Sometimes it's multiple times that you get out. Sometimes it is you choosing. Sometimes it's somebody helping you choose. There's so many exit ramps. There's not enough resources for those exit ramps. One second. But once you're out, there's this misnomer that, look, they're free. Yay.
I can just ride off into the sunset and have a perfect
Or-
white picket fence life.
Yes, exactly. Look, yay, they're free. And usually that journey, that's when the journey really begins. What they've been doing that up until that point is literally surviving. And I mean that with every ounce of what survival means in that word. But then afterwards, that's the journey. That is a very long and lengthy journey. And our advocacy model is to walk alongside survivors, should they choose for us to be there, of course, as long as they will have us. Some people, that's a year. Some people, that's 6 years. Some people, it's even longer. And it looks different for everybody because we believe in individualized care, not just, oh, you were trafficked, you must need these 25 things. Assessments, we do, and they are part and parcel of the whole thing. It's their voice, it's their choices. And we're not rescuing them, we're not healing them. We're walking alongside, encouraging, giving them the tools that they need so that God and they can heal themselves. And that looks like being there to go to court with them, being there to have so many clients who's have trials, with their traffickers. Not enough, unfortunately, but we do. So that's not an easy thing to do, to testify against your trafficker. And so we'll go with them, we accompany them to the prosecutor's office. So they have to go talk with the prosecutors. Obviously, there's a lot of those interviews with the prosecutor, building the case, preparing them for trial. We will attend those. We take them to doctor's appointments. We meet with them once a week, regardless of anything else they need, and do an advocacy mentoring type relationship. We just build relationship with them. Whatever that looks like that they need, we try everything we can to provide that, whether that's us or asking donors to help or reaching out to other partners. This year, we started a division called Reclaim. It's our healthcare initiative. So I have a medical director that works for Genesis and a director of healthcare who is a forensic nurse. And now we have this healthcare arm where we can, because our advocacy is mobile, we go to them. Now we can also take medical care to them also, which is fantastic and has been wonderful. Our Reclaim division also goes to ops with us when we support law enforcement in doing ops to recover, identify and recover victims. We have medical care right there on site immediately instead of having to take them to a hospital. Unless, of course, they want one. It's all about their choice. But this way, even with the forensic analysis of the sexual assault kits, that we have all of the ability to do all of that, the lab work, keep the chain of custody for law enforcement where it needs to be so that those kits will end up in court. We have all of that within Genesis. And the longer we've been having that, the easier, the more ways I see it can help, because sometimes we'll do homeless outreach to identify survivors stuck in that homeless area, and we can stuck in homelessness, and we can provide medical services right there on site as well. It's been a godsend. Recently, we had a kiddo who had her first date since she had been trafficked, which was like 3 years ago. And she was nervous, but she went, and unfortunately, it didn't go well. Let's put it that way. And rather than go to the hospital, she was able to call me, and I could dispatch her advocate, and our reclaim team to her house to do everything they would have done at the hospital in the comfort of her home where she felt safe and she didn't have to tell anybody. And it was just such a beautiful thing. We collaborate with FBI, state police, um, the CACs, which are the child advocacy centers. We have contracts with Arkansas DCFS, which is the Department of Children and Family Services. We're allowed to provide services to any kiddo who's in care of DCFS in the state of Arkansas. So it's not just this one person going, hey, we are very well partnered, very well established in the state. And I'm honored to have the partners we do, because that allows us to do what we do and to provide the services that we provide. And of course, we do training and legislative work. There's a ton of stuff that we do, but that's kind of a sneak peek inside of our advocacy.
Yes. And you touched on what I really want to dive into a little bit when we said, "Oh, they're free. They're just going to go live their white picket
Mhm.
fence life now." And turns out that's not how trauma works.
Yeah.
Who knew? Crazy. Um, so I would love if we can talk a little bit about survivors who go on to marry. How do you see their trauma impacting trust and intimacy in their romantic relationships post I'm free, but now, okay,
Now
now
what?
what?
Now what? So every human has a very different response to having survived sexual assault. And then with trafficking, that is sexual assault multiple times a day for a period of years, usually. Um, so it's like sexual assault on steroids again, I guess you would say. And I have seen people have all of the different responses, where I'm never going to have sex again, to being super hypersexualized because their body has been so used in such that a way that all of their senses are just heightened, to literally being scared of it, to thinking that they're now gay, or trying to become, like, literally trying to be like, nope, done, if their primary, because it's not just guys who buy, it is the predominance. Just saying. Humans hurt humans. That's what you need to remember with the whole trafficking thing. And sometimes it's just like, I'm swearing off guys, so they want to go a different way. So what I have seen in my work is that, in my opinion, not enough people even discuss sex with their client, or their, everybody calls them something different. Some people call them friends, clients, whatever. The survivor that whom they are providing services to, they don't open this can of worms. And I think it's because, well, it's probably a lot of reasons. I say, and what I have done is, well, I didn't want to get married. When I was lucky enough to get out alive, I didn't want to get married or have kids. I wanted to go to college, wanted to become a doctor. That's all I was focused on. I fell in love against my will, literally. 40 years later, here we are. So once I realized, okay, no, I'm getting married, I'm not going to let this go and wonder. I'm going to give it a try. I was like, I don't know. I just had this epiphany one night of, I'll be damned if I'm going to let that steal this sex life, this
Mhm.
intimate, amazing thing that I'm supposed to be able to have with my husband. I don't want to, I have a right to that. And maybe it was rebellion. Maybe it was just like a need for justice. I don't know. I was just like, basically, oh, hell no. I'm not going to be triggered every time I want to have, you know, make love to my husband. That's just, I'm not going to. And so in recapturing that for myself, I learned a lot of lessons, I think, And I try really hard to impart those to my clients. And I try to be, even with our kids as we were raising them, just be very open about sex. God invented sex. Like it's humans who tried to mess it up and make it gross. It's not gross. Like if it's gross, you're doing it wrong. Like contact one of
Yeah.
us.
Yeah,
Because
for sure.
if it's gross, no. Like it can be good. Now, everybody's trafficking situation and assault is different. And sometimes things are harmed. Most times things are harmed, but the body can really heal and heal well. And so, depending on what the issues are that are physical, there's usually an answer to those. Most of it is the internal wounds, the heart wounds, the soul wounds. Because, in my opinion, sex is one of the only ways on this earth where we have, and I don't know that this is biblical, this is just what I have found. Disclaimer, I'm not quoting any book of the Bible. It's my belief, what I have found, it's one of the only ways in this physical realm that we live in where two spirits, two souls can combine, can touch, can, play together, if you will. Um, it's intimate and it was meant to be that way. That's how God made it. And God hasn't made anything that's not good. So just saying. There were some things that really triggered me when I figured out something that triggered me. Again, I'm kind of stubborn. Some people would say I like determined, but whatever. Um, I was like, I'm going to figure out a way to do, and if it was something I wanted to do, let me rephrase that. But if there
Yeah.
was something that I had been told and it triggered me and it was something I wished I could do, then I reclaimed it. I was like, no, this is mine. It. And then I did that thing with my husband until doing it with him was the primary memory. It was the primary desire.
Hmm.
And it's like I rewrote it. Like, but remember when we had CDs and you'd burn a CD and then you could reburn it? It's like I reburned it. I think first you have to lift that veil of that sex is bad or something, because it's just not.
Yeah.
Non-consenting is bad.
And I think especially for those who might have been raised in purity culture, who told them that, you know, I have clients all the time or followers who will DM me and say, the church told me that I was dirty and no one would want me because I was raped and, I wasn't a virgin anymore. And so that's just compounding the trauma, right? If so now you're heaping spiritual abuse on top of the actual sexual abuse, trafficking issues and things like that. So
Control. Don't forget control.
yes, 100%. Um speaking okay. So speaking of Dr. Ashley Hudson, um she put out a video today where she was talking about one of the points in her research because she studied the effects of purity culture on postpartum maternal mental health. And she said that she was talking to her supervisor as she was analyzing data points. And she said that she felt like women were reclaiming their sexuality through the pregnancy, birth, postpartum process, that they were reclaiming their sexuality. And her supervisor said, is it a reclamation or are they claiming it for the first time? Because the church stole it from them first. They never had it to begin with. The church took control of their sexuality and they never had it to begin with. And it was like, this is so good. This is so good. Yes. Yes. And so, speaking of the ways that the church controls female sexuality, you guys know that's like one of my soapbox. I will never pass up this opportunity to soapbox about purity culture being the flip side of pornography because they both commodify and fetishize female sexuality every time. We're gonna have to stop so I can climb up on my little box. So my point is Deep breath. Let's get back on track. What are some other ways that you see modern American evangelicalism, because that's not the same thing as biblical Christianity. So, what are some ways that you see modern American evangelicalism re traumatizing trafficking survivors?
Question. Um, okay.
It's a really big,
It's big, and
scary question. And
I'm
look, you
setting
girl,
my mind.
you know that I just live to stir the pot.
No, it's
So,
good. I like the stirring, and I'm on that soapbox that you mentioned with you and about 100 others.
yeah.
Um, so first and foremost, I do want to say that when someone exits, especially sexual trafficking, the only harm they have is not just having been raped for money multiple times. There's so much other harm that goes with that, physical, emotional, mental, all of the things, but also spiritual. Even if, I mean, it is very prevalent in so many people's experience with their trafficker, whether the trafficker, um, you know, went to church or not. It doesn't have to. We think of spiritual abuse, we hear that, and we think, oh, it must have happened in church. But our country, even if you don't know, or even if you're not walking with Jesus, um, you know scripture somewhere, even if it's one or two. And I've had so many survivors kept out of the church simply because of what the trafficker did or what the buyers did. So there's that piece as well. And then you have this, I love how you framed the church. That's why I identify as a Christ follower, because yeah. Um,
There is a distinct difference between modern American evangelicalism and what the Bible actually says.
there is. There is. I mean, if you're not sure, like Song of Solomon, hello, there's so
Yeah.
much there in and of itself. But even outside of that, let's like not even talk about sex. Let's talk about how we treat each other. Because how Jesus treated us is our standard. How he treated the people he encountered every single day, that is our standard. That's our standard of behavior. That's our standard for love, kindness, patience, all of the things, mercy, justice. And when you
Mm.
it's same exact top question and you apply that to the question, it's the same answer. It's not just about sex. It's like, are you church on the corner of Fifth and Main? Is that pastor treating every person who walks through those doors as Jesus would? Is he exuding the love of Christ the best that he can as a human? Are the parishioners doing that? Is that what you're teaching? Because if not, I don't care who you are. If you're dealing with drugs or porn or alcohol, or you were sexually abused by your father every day of your life growing up, or if you were sex trafficked for 20 years, you're not going to be treated the way you should when you walk through those doors. And anything that that church feels like is a big no-no is going to be focused on you. And that's not okay. And that's what I see. That is what I see. I came back to Christ in 1995 after I was saved when I was 11. That's when I first confessed and believed. And I was trafficked from 15 and a half to 18 and a half or something like that. Anyway, after the trafficking, I didn't like renounce Jesus or anything like that. He was totally there, but I the shame kept me so far away. I thought I would never darken the door of a church again. Um, the church, evangelical church, I don't care who you are. If you're professing love because of a savior, then that better be being walked out by you, or else you're not walking out what you're believing. And that's what should be aimed at people who are hurting. And trafficking survivors are hurting in a way that most humans will never thankfully thankfully comprehend. And Jesus was with me the entire time I was being trafficked. And he saved my life so many times. I can't even begin to count. And when I go into a lot of churches, that's not the Jesus that they're sharing. And they're wrong for that. But it's most likely because they don't know him. There's a difference between, this is a Bible, hold on. There's a difference between knowing what was written about Jesus in the newspaper and knowing what was written on your heart because of your relationship with him. And knowing what he told you in his love letter, aka the Bible. Sorry.
No, that's great. Yeah, I see it. So, um, I don't know if I'll put this in the intro, but the reason I am connected to Kathy is because her daughter is one of my soul sisters. And together we have been in leadership for a mom's ministry. And it kills me every time because we occasionally get people who pop up and they want to talk about there's this lady at our church who just is wearing the most inappropriate clothing, and I think I somebody needs to say something to her, and or things
How do
like
you
that.
ask needs assistance? I'm sorry.
And right, no, exactly. And it makes me mad every time something like that comes up because she is not the one with the heart issue. The fact that you are posting about her on the internet tells me that you are the one with the heart issue because you're not getting curious. She might have just come out of a trafficking situation. That's the only clothes that she has. Praise God, she's in church. And
You
and that's why it is so important to me to make the distinction between modern American evangelicalism that has created all of these pharisaical rules
know,
for standards of dress and behavior that are not in the Bible
and a
versus,
patriarchy that's not even biblical.
um,
Don't even like
no, not even
even.
remotely biblical.
Mhm.
And
So
and that's why what you have said is so important because especially when you said justice, I think modern American evangelicalism forgets that Jesus is a God of justice. And modern American evangelicalism has twisted that justice to want to exact justice against what the pet sin of the day is, which is all
yeah,
things sex.
one thing I was going to say.
Yeah,
Yes,
it's
exactly.
it's all things sex,
When
right? And
I
so,
will maybe think about getting on the bandwagon, maybe when y'all start holding every other damn sin up against the same standard, because you don't.
yeah,
You never see anybody post online about, oh, you're gossiping, you're
yep.
lying, you're cheating, you're lusting
Mm-hmm.
in your head. Nope, it's all about people who have a different sexuality than you would think they should have, and people who've been assaulted sexually. Those are the
It's
big, those are
yeah,
the
it's
big,
anyone
like, what?
who is acting well, and not even that. It's anyone who
Hmm.
is acting outside of made up sexual parameters, right? Because I get attacked a lot because I talk about kink being okay between consenting married couples. And that it there are some sects of Christianity who have decided that blindfolds are an abomination, and that I am sending people straight to hell because I suggested a blindfold, or heaven forbid, I show up in a video with a kinky bracelet. They
Oh
lose
shit,
their
I opened
minds.
my eyes. I'm sorry, I closed my eyes
No,
for a minute.
but like, if you guys
That
are not
woman.
watching the video of this, if you're just listening to the audio, you should probably turn on the video because Kathy's. facial expressions are chef's kiss. She's like me. She's like me. She has a problem with, even if her mouth doesn't say it, her face is going to. Um, and so it isn't just, the war on homosexuality or, it's any, the church's pet sin is any sex outside of what their particular subculture has deemed acceptable.
And they're not big on espousing
What the
consent.
Bible says.
So
Oh,
there's
that
that.
too.
Yeah, there's
Yeah,
that. That's the
consent.
first one.
Consent. Who
But
cares about consent or what the
because
Bible
I
says?
mean, I have a wedding ring. What more do I need? I have a
Yeah.
piece of paper that says I was married. She's mine. He's mine. No, consent is important. It is always important, no matter what. No matter what. Even again, look outside of sex, look at the Bible, and even the relationship Jesus had with the Father. Hello, it was
Consent.
respectful. It was respectful. Consent is respectful. Like if you want to break it down,
Yeah.
consent is being respectful.
Yes. So up on the screen, I'm going to drop one of our favorite images. Kathy has seen this image and she loves it. The Fry's model of consent
Mm.
tells us that consent needs to be freely given, reversible, informed, enthusiastic, and specific. And so, just like you're saying, when you break the definition down that way, it is literally the bottom line is just respect.
Which is not just for men.
What?
Sorry. It's not just for
I,
men.
oh my gosh, what?
Yeah,
I
respect
didn't,
is not just for men. It's not.
but they need it and we
Um,
need
don't
love.
even know. I'm not going there. We don't have time for that book that you're referencing.
Oh, Kathy, do
Oh my
we
God,
do
I
we do
cannot
a
even.
whole
Cannot
episode
even.
on how that book contributes to like I can see how some traffickers would use that book to get what they want. Oh, that's like a whole thing. Okay. Wow. Tell
Yes,
your
that
social media girl that we went so far off script and we started talking about the book.
yeah, I'll bet. I'm sorry. But seriously, consent is the bottom. If you drill down, drill down, drill down, consent is respect, respect for each other. It's not just respect for yourself, which is what the patriarchy is.
Yes. And there's so many things that I like have see soapbox. Yes. Okay, so let's pull it together. Because at this point I don't even know how long we've gone and I want to make sure that we
Oh,
hit on some of the other important things. So we've talked about how trauma go it will impact if you are in a relationship with a trafficking victim that there's going to be a lot of traumas and triggers and things to work through and obviously and I love the way that you talked about your reclamation of your personal triggers and things because that goes along with a lot of what I say when I am asked about like, well, how do I recover from purity culture? And I'm like, my response to that a lot of times is, all right, look, y'all, I don't know why God wanted me to do this thing that I'm doing because really I just thought I was going to get on the internet and talk about vibrators. Because when y'all tell me that, well, tell us how to recover from purity culture my personality is such that like I'm gonna fight the devil and kick him in the mouth. And
yes.
so like if the devil is telling me that I should be ashamed because purity culture, screw you. I'm gonna do it harder. I'm gonna have more sex with my husband and I'm gonna like it because you don't want me to. And so that's my big suggestion for overcoming purity culture or other assorted traumas is just fight the devil and do it harder to piss him off. I don't know if that's the healthiest model, but it works.
Just blessing a little, but it does work. It does work. And it brings up something else on a serious note, that I also don't hear talked about a lot. And so now I guess it's my turn. As hard as it is and as few people who get out of trafficking as there are, and it's like less than 2% exit trafficking that are in it. So used to be one. I think we've moved up to 2 or 3 now. Which is a heavy, heavy number to me. I'm very
Yes.
humbled
I
by
didn't
that number.
realize it was that low.
Yeah. However, in addition, getting out, as we said, is not freedom. The day that I exited, I wasn't like, woohoo, freedom. I was literally numb. I was confused. I didn't know what had just happened. I didn't know how to feel emotion anymore. There's just such a dense amount of trauma, a deep amount that it takes over. It takes years to heal. And the point I'm trying to get to is that it's my very humble opinion. I'm not trying to be weird. Too many survivors don't get healing because it's such hard work and there's not enough resources. Too many people that do exit, they do get to be alive. They do get to have quote unquote a life, but it's a very, very, very broken life because they don't have what they need to get the healing that everybody assumes is there for the taking, because it's not. It's not. And I think we don't talk about that enough. And the sex life is part of it.
So that actually brings up a really great question that I had, because a lot of times we see with any sort of trauma where one spouse has significant trauma, whether it is trafficking or some other sort of trauma, where the other spouse slips into a sort of savior role in the marriage. And so, do you have any suggestions or cautions for help couples to sort of avoid slipping into that dynamic?
Yeah. Point where you're in a really a relationship strong enough where you're already thinking about marriage. I like, clearly there's 2 ways to go. You can like get out anybody ever and just die knowing that you were trafficked. Or you can tell somebody, even if it's just your closest people. I think that you need to make that decision and you need to care what that looks like for you. And you need to, I shouldn't say you need, my advice would be to do that. Like, and this is the same stuff I tell even my kiddos, like, this is your life. You get the one life. But every choice you make, you're the one who has the consequences of the choice, not your parents, not your advocate, not your spouse, not your best friend. So it's okay to ask other people, what would you do? How should I handle this? In the end, though, get with someone who can help you look at the big picture of your whole life. Because what you do when you're 18 or 22 is radically different a lot of times than what you would do if you knew what the next 40 years would hold. And so when you're talking about a survivor telling somebody, I know this isn't your question exactly, but it's a great place to put it. It is so important to know and think about the rest of your life and all of the decisions you make about sharing your story. Even with your intimate partner, if you decide to tell them, which if you're going to do life with them, I highly suggest, but that's me, because it's part of your experience, it's part of your life, and there's nothing to be ashamed of. You didn't do it. The shame belongs on the traffickers and the buyers, not on you. So I'd definitely tell them, start however you want, start small. But if you choose to tell your intimate partner, then make sure that you're also telling you this because I love you and because you love me, not because I need you to. We equate that with men, but women are fixers too. And so whether your partner, whatever sex your partner is, they love you. And you're telling them an egregious, egregious, egregious harm that happened to the person that they adore. And there's literally nothing they can do about it. So there's going to be what I call, I've always called it this, impotent anger. Because there's this anger they're going to have that there's nothing, they can't aim it at the trafficker usually. They can't aim it at the buyer. Usually they don't aim it at you because it's not yours. So helping them learn how to process what they've just learned is huge. Encouraging them to have somebody safe they can process it with. A therapist would be ideal. Um, and then setting boundaries around that. Just because I've told you does not mean I want to relive every nasty moment of it so that you can have all the deets. um, and I actually always encourage people to either, if they want to process all of the stuff that's happened, do that with a therapist. Even if you're not asking a therapist to do anything, you just need to verbally process. Or even a fellow survivor who is maybe farther along on the journey than you, because not that non-survivors understand or be there to support, but when you're telling the really insane stuff, you don't have to then explain why you don't have to explain why it's such a big deal, because they're there too, and they get it.
I also want to take a moment right here to give a plug for EMDR therapy. I just did an episode with a therapist who specializes in EMDR, and she specifically said that she doesn't need to know all of the details of what you're dealing with in order to help you through EMDR. She said that she had a client, she had sort of a vague idea of what the client was working on, but she didn't know everything, and she's not even entirely certain like she was 100% correct in, this is what the client was working on, because of the way that EMDR functions. So if you're listening to Kathy say, have someone to process with, have someone to talk to, and you're like, I don't want to talk about it, I don't want to have to verbally say these things, that sounds awful. um we don't,
You don't have
we don't kink shame here. You can intellectualize all your emotions all you want to here. That's fine. That's a joke, by the way. If you didn't get it, ask someone with a background in psychology. They will explain it to you. So the point is, if you don't want to talk about the things that you went through, try out EMDR, because it is a fabulous modality for that specific, like, you don't have to talk and you can still get therapy.
absolutely. And I will piggyback on that and say there's another modality called brain spotting. They're similar. They were kind of birthed. Brain spotting was birthed out of EMDR. They're both really good. And the hundreds of survivors I have worked with, I have noticed, like, disclaimer, I'm not a psychologist, but I noticed pattern.
Mhm.
And I don't know that this is, I did tell this to my therapist, and she was like, "Oh, I hadn't thought about that, but I think you're right." I have noticed that folks who are like, I am a feeler, I'm more emotional, and I'm factual driven too, but there's some people who are just really thinkers, and like task oriented. That's the word I'm looking for. Task oriented people tend to thrive with EMDR. Task-oriented people
Yes.
tend to thrive with brain spotting. Now, will both work for you? Absolutely. And you can actually say nothing if you want. EMDR was actually, I think, first used with Vietnam, that would not say a word about what they went through, and they still got healing from it. So thank you for bringing that up, Angela. It's super important.
Yes. That EMDR is another one of my new soapboxes for 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 things. So how can the church, the big C church. People fuss at me when I say the church, because, they're like, oh, my church never taught love and respect. What kind of church did you go to? Or my church never taught purity
I
culture.
mean, the
What kind of
body of
church did
Christ.
you go to? No, the big C church, modern American evangelicalism. Like, so how can the Big C church better support victims of trafficking? Like, if you had a wish list, what would be like the number one thing?
Wish list. One, accept them wholeheartedly the way Jesus accepted Mary Magdalene at his feet, washing his feet with her hair and breaking her oil onto him. Welcome them wholeheartedly because Jesus does. Ask them what they need. Know that it's gonna be messy. It's gonna be messy. Most trafficking survivors, you think of anything that you want to help, any cause that everybody has a different cause. Okay, except for animal. Well, no, I won't even distract from that because some people have a pet and they'd rather be homeless and than live without the pet. So think of any cause you have: domestic violence, homelessness, um, animals, abortion, sexual assault, like violence against women, all of those causes, in physical abuse, emotional abuse, all of those. Uh, um, the victim in front of you has experienced all of those, and a bunch that I haven't mentioned. So when I say it's going to be messy, there's going to be a lot of needs. If you truly want to help, there'll be a lot of needs because they have nothing, because their life was attempted to be stolen from them. A lot of time, if they started getting, the average age of trafficking in America entry is 12 to 14. Let that sink in. 12 to 14. So that's middle school. Let's say they were trafficked for 6 years and they were 13. Now they're 19. Most people aren't going to school. It does happen. Most people aren't going to school while they're being trafficked. So now you have a 19-year-old who's no longer being trafficked, but for all intents and purposes, sorry, fly, last time she was in school, or they were in school, it was sixth grade. Like, what? How easy do you think it's going to be for her to get a job? To know how to do a job interview, to know where to go to get her ID, to know any of the things that we learn in our middle, high school, and high school years. It's not there for her. She has lots of life experience and acts like an adult because she's been beyond adultified. So it's messy. There's a lot, but there's some of the best people. And I'm not saying it because I am one. Some of my favorite people in the entire universe are survivors that I have met along this journey. They're freaking amazing. And they have so much personality and they have the deepest hearts and they want to help. So love on them the way Jesus would in all the things that they need. Help them find housing. Find an organization who can help support them. Help them with the needs they need, like getting signed up for a GED, helping them find a job, all of those things. They need everything. They're beyond homeless, way past homelessness. Be willing to be all in, because that's what Jesus was. And that's what he told everybody he recruited, because Jesus did recruit, by the way. Think on that for a second. He said, let the dead bury their dead. He said, let the dead bury their dead. Come with me, follow me. Are we doing that, church? Are you doing that? Be the one in your church who is. Be the one. Jesus left the 99 to go for the one. Be the one that's different and starts a change in your church. But we've got to stop the Big C church has got to stop protecting the buyers and the traffickers, which are predominantly men. And that includes pastors. I've had people who were trafficked by pastors. I've served survivors who were trafficked by the pastor's wife and not the pastor. I've served survivors who were assaulted by their youth pastor, sold by their youth pastor. There's no human that it can't happen to or is above doing it. It's a broken world with broken humans. The church needs to step up and read the Bible that Jesus left us and stop reading into it and let the Holy Spirit reflect the heart of the words that he left behind for us and to depend on the Holy Spirit within ourselves to walk out what he's asked us to walk out and stop making up rules that are insane and just benefit you.
Oh, there's so many things to say to that. I really need to talk about when you say the church needs to stop protecting the buyers and the sellers and predominantly men.
Go ahead.
What does that look like? What does that how does the church protect them and what do we need to be doing?
How does it protect them? Let me grab some headlines for you. Um, sorry, I'll be serious. So sarcasm is my love language. My apologies. Dry
Well,
sarcasm.
and okay, yeah. So, yeah, this is also part of the reason Kathy and I get along so famously is because we are both, our first language is sarcasm, our second language is English. But also, I want to acknowledge that for some of us who have been doing this work for years and years, we don't say things the way that we do to be flippant or callous. We say it because we're freaking tired. I'm tired of having the same fight about obligation sex, which is a part
Oh,
of
do
this
not eat.
whole thing
That's not a
too.
thing. That's rape.
Yeah. Yeah.
No,
Well, and
no,
that's
there is no
exactly,
obligation sex. It is rape. If you
exactly.
don't consent, it is sexual assault if you want to be nicer, but it's rape because sexual assault is rape if
Yes.
like, oh,
It's just a nicer word to make the Tea Party Christians feel better about their lives. And so when Kathy and I are responding and you think, wow, they're like so unserious or something, it's not because we are so unserious. It's because we're tired. I'm tired of having the talk about consent, about a wedding ring isn't blanket consent. I'm tired of having to talk about trad wives and patriarchy and how that's all just kink. It's literally kink content. Okay, I'm tired of having these conversations. So when I say, how is the church protecting the buyers and the sellers and the men who are committing these crimes? And Kathy responds with, let me pull you some headlines. It's because she is tired, just
yes,
like me, because we're tired of y'all's mess. So,
it is so
how
good, so good. Are they
how do
protecting
we
them?
stop protecting how do you see the church
Be brave.
protecting?
Like just freaking be brave and call a spade a spade. If it comes up that a man in the church is forcing his wife to have sex under the guise of traditional, all the things we just talked about, then have some conversation, have some, take it as a teaching moment. Do something instead of sweep it underneath, which has been the MO. And then also cover for them. Like, yes, Jesus forgives sins. Here's what I see. Um, Chad here raped somebody. He was 21. He raped a 14-year-old. Then he went on his merry life. Dun, 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 dun. I've graduated from college. I have a great job. Oh, look, I'm going to be a youth pastor. The church knows about it because they did a background check. It, or for whatever reason, they know. Maybe Chad decides to tell them because God told Chad he forgave him. When God told Chad he forgave him, did Chad reach out to the girl and apologize? No, because God forgave me and I'm all clean now. That's bullshit. Yes, he's clean. Yes, God can forgive him. But there's two parties in a rape. There's two parties in a sexual assault. If one person is getting forgiveness from God, you know what? Jesus is going, well, the 14-year-old needs a little bit of attention too. We don't just go as a church, well, it was so long ago, and he was baptized since then, and he received Christ since then, and now he's got a degree. We really do need a youth pastor. It'll be fine. He's a different person. God makes all things new. Yes, audience, he does make all things new. But also, there are things that require consequences, even if the consequence is going to little Kathy or whoever her name was and apologizing and asking, I can't believe I did that. Here it is, 9 years later. I can't believe I did that. What do you need? Do you need therapy? What do you need? Do you need me to write a confession? What do you need? I did something egregious. If you are really changed, if you've really been forgiven, if you really are a new person, you wouldn't behave the same way the person did who raped her because God
If
made
you,
you. And the church wouldn't cover it up. They would be rallying alongside you going, dude, no. They would be educating on porn. Porn is so addictive. I'm sorry. I know you want to say something. I'll stop. There's so many
no,
answers.
I just want to say that if you are outraged that Brock Turner can just live his life in my state, just live his life, but you're okay with what she just described, you need to look up the word cognitive dissonance because you got some serious uh double standards going on there.
Right.
And I want to be super duper clear. God is a God of forgiveness. God will absolutely forgive a rapist, and that is absolutely not what we're saying. Nobody is beyond redemption. Nobody is beyond the saving power of Christ, but you don't get to be a horrible human and live without consequences for the rest of your life.
Well, and
That's the
the thing
point.
is, though, what about the people that, if you did something and there was a victim, like if you just went out and
It's the
like,
church's responsibility to prevent any further potential victims. If
yes,
you did something and
and
there was a
take
victim, the church has a
responsibility for that.
responsibility to prevent further victimization of any other human.
Yeah. And check up on
And
that
you can
pastor.
be changed and never even be tempted to create another victim ever again. But the church cannot rely on that claim. The church has a responsibility to
And
protect others.
just be real about all of the things instead of acting like we shouldn't talk about pornography or safe sex or healthy sex or bad, non or sexual assault or rape in church. If it's a human if it affects the human condition in any way, shape, or form, the church should be responding. Here's one thing that I wholeheartedly believe, I say it all the time. God never asked the world to fix world problems. That job. If you're a Christ follower, it's your job. Yours, the one listening, you. It's your job. If we don't respond, the world will. We can't hold the world to God's standard because they're the world. You get to choose. I get to choose. I was trafficked. Trust me, freedom, I would rather be unloved than unfree. I get to serve a God that I chose to serve. We don't hold the world to God's standard. We got to stop doing that. You're keeping people from God by doing that. We need to come along and love like Jesus, give people options, give them truth, and you know what? Wait for it. Let them make their own decision. What?
And that means if they don't choose the way that you want them to, you have to be okay with that.
Yeah, it's not on you. I mean, you don't have to be okay with it, but you don't have any choice. It's not your
You don't,
choice.
right? Like, I'm not saying that you like have to participate in, give them money to go buy drugs. That's not what I'm saying. Or, whatever. I'm saying that you can't, it's
It's none,
not,
it's none of your business.
yeah, like, and you're not doing yourself or them any favors by getting hyper about a choice that you don't like.
That's exactly right. Because
So,
going back to what I said earlier, all the consequences of people's choices are on them, not the all the peanut gallery's advice.
yes. Okay. Um, I just want to be super clear
Right.
to
All over the
backtrack
place.
a tiny bit. If you are going to a church who um, preaches an obligation sex message from the pulpit, that, like Kathy said, that's rape. You need to call the pastor out on it. You need to, and if you like, please call the pastor out on it. I know some of you are so conflict averse that thought makes you want to vomit. At the very least, you need to leave. You need to leave that church because it is not a safe or healthy church. You can contact me for resources that you can send um, if you are in that sort of church. But also, like she said, if your church is not speaking about issues of trafficking or rape, you can also direct them to the Genesis Project website that I will link in the show notes for you and say, hey, this is a fantastic organization. I feel like we should be getting some resources from them so that we can help people in our community. Um, Also, side note. So, with that said, you did mention that part of what you do is if you have someone that needs support, sometimes you need to contact donors to fund certain things that the survivor might need. So, donors, what? People can donate?
They absolutely can. Yeah. We survive off of donations. So, and like I said, in 3 years, we've served 246, predominantly minors. That's a lot of minors for central. That's just central Arkansas. Y'all.
Yeah,
It's a lot of work to do.
that's
It's it's a lot of. So go to our website, get more information, uh, send us an email, the contact. If you have questions, reach out. We're on social media as well. I think we'll put all of the links. But yeah, you can
yeah.
give, you can become a catalyst, which is a monthly donor. And the catalysts are what keep us going.
All right. Do you have any final thoughts that you would like to leave our listeners
Um, so many thoughts. We
with?
bounced all over. And thank you if you're
Shocker.
listening. Um, Thank you for abiding with us. I would say, we all get the one life. Nobody's ever going to be on their deathbed wishing that they had spent one more hour at work or one more hour at the mall or one more hour, I don't know, skateboarding in the park, maybe if that's your thing. But you will have potentially, there's a huge chance you'll get there and you'll have regrets. Don't let staying in a church, staying in a relationship, whatever, be your regret. If there's something that's hard, no matter how hard it is, just go ahead and grab onto it and determine to change it. Even if you change it 1 degree, it's better than it was before you started doing the work. And that's what we're here for. We're here to leave the world a better place than when we found it and hopefully impact other people with the message of Christ, which is a change, it's a life-changing thing. It's life-changing. He crossed eternity, so he didn't have to go through eternity without us. Like, there's no greater love. Figure out what makes your heart burn with passion, what makes your heart sing, and do that thing. Do that thing and do it well, because you're the only you that's ever going to be created. He only made one Kathy Bryan that's exactly me. He only went one Angela Griffin, exactly her. You get the one life. Make it count.
Okay, thank you so much for being here and go have good sex, y'all. Thank you for joining me for this important conversation on Go Have Good Sex. And don't worry, I've already asked Kathy to come back and do an episode on talking to our middle schoolers and high schoolers since they are the most frequent victims of trafficking. And I want her to come back and talk to us about how we can help them navigate and see the danger coming. I hope today's episode helped pull back the curtain on trafficking and gave you tools to build safety, healing, and intimacy in your own life and community. If you want to learn more about the Genesis Project and their initiatives like Reclaim, Advocacy, and Training, check out the links in the show notes. And if you're ready to go deeper in your own marriage, you'll find resources like my 31 Days of Intimacy and coaching opportunities there as well. Remember, sex is never meant to be an obligation or a wound. It's meant to be the celebration of intimacy that you have built in every other part of your life. Go have good sex. That's it for today's episode. You've been blessed and probably slightly scandalized. Now go journal, go text your man, and most of all, don't keep this to yourself. Share it, review it, slide into my DMs. Then grab a journal, a game, or a coaching spot. And remember, Jesus didn't die for you to have boring sex. So go have good sex already.